We need peace.
Card from Mr. Saramo from the left. Do you accept it?
Thank you, Chair. I will ask in Finnish.
Do you know how much the Chechen war cost? How much the Russian operations in Georgia and Moldova have cost? How much the Baltic countries pay for hybrid attacks by Russia on their infrastructure? How will we pay if Russia isn't stopped? Putin has shown, and Trump have shown, that they do not respect international law. Where will this end? Do you have a view on that?
Kedves képviselő úr,
Well, sir, the European Union is paying over 7 billion euros for this war. Everybody is claiming that this is necessary for the peace to prevail in Europe. If you just took a fraction of this massive sum of money and spent it in Europe instead, then that would have been a much better approach. This is a waste of taxpayers' money.
Next speaker is Mr. Jadi.
Κυρία Φοντερ Λάιεν,
Ms. von der Leyen, strange as it may seem, I would agree with the statement you made 3 days ago and again today in the wake of the proposed peace plan. In other words, that Ukraine's borders cannot be changed by the use of force. I agree, and I'd even take it further. But just 1 day earlier, you described Turkey as an important partner for the European Union, a country, in other words, that is illegally occupying European territory and is attempting to change borders through the use of force and through committing war crimes. That member state of the European Union that you always conveniently forget to mention in your speeches, Cyprus. Madam President, Europe cannot be selective. No invader can ever be considered a partner, be it Russia, be it Turkey. So let's give up on hypocrisy. Let's fight together for freedom, because no legitimization of illegal fait accompli can ever be accepted, whether we're talking Ukraine or Cyprus.
Mrs. Keller from Renew, do you accept it? Madam Keller.
Ana Vasconcelos, sorry, in another seat. How do you...
Sorry, it's to Mrs. Keller, to the one that I'm giving the floor.
I'm in another seat, sorry. I'm Ana Vasconcelos. I requested the blue card. Can I take it?
But are you sit in Mrs. Keller's seat?
I am,
Are you sitting?
yes.
Okay, it was for you. The confusion, it was because you were sitting in her seat.
Okay.
Madame Vasconcelos, you have the floor.
How can we truly keep our nation safe and protect us from the desires of our enemy, Putin, if we give in to his demands? Is it not the lesson from 2014 that Europe's weak response to the annexation of Crimea led to the encouragement of Putin invading Ukraine? Is it not the lesson from the Second World War that when we stand up and show that we will not capitulate, that we in the end are safer and can safeguard our way of living? Is that also not the lesson from the Cold War? How are you claiming to protect our nations, keep us safe, keep us strong, if you give in to these demands?
Thank you very much, Madame Vasconcelos. Mr. Yedi.
Well, I am glad you agree with what I've said, that I'll repeat this once again. I was saying I'm delighted that you agree with what I said, that no invading state can
Sasa
be
mmefikiwa
and be
na
seen as a
Rusha
partner and
Pata,
ally of
mchezo
the,
mpya
European
unaopatikana kwenye
Union. Whether
menyu ya
we're talking
SportPesa
about
tu.
Russia
Piga
or
nyota.
Ukraine, because we have a duty as a European Parliament,
that we in the
indeed, as a
end
European
are
Union,
safer and can
to,
safeguard
protect
our way of living.
international law
Is that also
in
not the lesson
Ukraine
from the
and
Cold
in
War?
Cyprus?
How are you
Freedom
claiming
for
to
Ukraine
protect
and
our
for Cyprus?
nations, keep us safe, keep us strong, if you give in to these demands?
President, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you very
it's not
much,
about a
Madam
peace plan.
Vasconcelos.
From
Mr.
the very
Likiijadili.
start, it was a Russian diktat. It's more. It's a hybrid attack on us all,
Well,
because
I
Russia
am glad you agree with what
economically
I've
has
said,
huge problems,
that,
and
no,
militarily it hasn't had the
I'll
success
repeat
that
this
they
once
thought they
again. I
would
was
after
saying
4
I'm,
years. And the
delighted that you
19-point
agree
plan,
with
I
what
don't know
I
it.
said,
I don't know if anybody knows
no,
it. I've only heard that Putin has already
invading
rejected it. In the
state
US,
can,
the
Sasa
chaos is perfect.
mmefikiwa
and be
na
seen as a
Rusha
partner
Pata,
and ally of
mchezo
the
mpya
European
unaopatikana kwenye
Whether we're
menyu ya
talking
SportPesa
about
tu.
Russia
Piga
or
nyota.
Ukraine, because
They're,
we have a duty
telling
as
the
a
Russians
European
how to
Parliament,
That
deal
we in the
indeed, as a
end
European
are
Union,
safer and can
to,
safeguard
protect
our
now
way.
Europe is coming in because we should see things through the lens of Russia. We must see the role of Ukraine. They're the victims, and I don't like the fact that perpetrators and victims are being mixed up. Russia is the aggressor, and you can't discuss that. You can't wish it away. Europe must act, first of all, diplomatically. We need to have our own proposals and not just reacting. Secondly, economically, the 140 billions must immediately be made available for Ukraine. And yes, and also militarily. I'm happy that Irachi in the Socialists in Spain has said we must remain active militarily. The objectives, Ukraine must neutralize the targets from which daily missiles and drones are being found, and the majority of those are affecting the civilian population, and we can't accept that.
Have the floor.
Colleagues, what happened last week is Putin's rescue plan. Russia is a monster on a clay feet, like the collapsed USSR, and Putin desperately needs Washington's hand. Ukraine needs peace more than anything else. Russia wants to continue its aggressive policy. The only way to just and long-lasting peace is to help Ukraine to win and not be afraid to punish the aggressor. There will be no good, long-lasting deal with Putin, just as there was no good deal with Hitler. And what is our role, the EU's? It is essential. Today we need an European plan not only for Ukraine's European future, but also for Russia. We need a plan for not Putin's rescue, which some in Washington are doing, but a plan for Russia to become a normal state. You say unrealistic. Let Putin lose in Ukraine, then we'll see. The most important strategic provision of the European plan is that Ukraine will become a member of the EU as soon as possible. We must already integrate Ukraine into all EU defense projects being developed. Today, Ukraine is no less important for our own security than the United States has been for us until now. We are on the right track, but the fruits of the strategic defense decisions we make now will come later, and the most dangerous period is now. There is a long and difficult road ahead. Let's not be afraid to speak openly to our people. We have no other choice. We have to take great responsibility for Europe's security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Madame Van Bremt, you have the floor.
Dank u wel, voorzitter.
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen. If you look at Trump's peace plan, or if you listen to the far right or the far left, then it's almost as if there's a problem that needs to be resolved between two warring countries, but nothing is closer to the truth. That's fake news. It's a fake narrative. This war was started illegally by Putin, the aggressor, and that has to be the point of departure of any peace negotiations. It's obvious that there has to be a ceasefire to start with. We have to have a lasting peace based on international law. But it is also important, and I'm very pleased that also von der Leyen pointed this out, that we look at the human suffering that has gone on. More than 17,000 children have been kidnapped during the course of this war from Ukraine to Russia. Any peace agreement has to make sure that all of those children, right down to the last one, can go home to their homes in Ukraine. And finally, this war and the ceasefire and reconstruction needs to be paid by Russia. We need to make sure that we find a solution within Council for using frozen assets as soon as possible. Thank you.
Dear colleague, Mr. Nimisto, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Ukraine needs Europe now more than ever. We must deliver. Last week, one thing became obviously clear. A US government that is not ready to protect democratic values within its own country cannot be trusted to protect these values abroad. It is a task we must bear in Europe. Ukraine needs a Europe that is united in its support, and Russian authoritarian imperialism and its war policy cannot be allowed to succeed. A capitulation or a forced peace on their terms would only increase the risk to democracy and of future wars in Europe, not just for Ukraine, but for all of us. Europe must increase its military and diplomatic support to Ukraine. The decision on the €140 billion reparations loan to Ukraine, with the backing of Russia's frozen assets, must be made in the coming weeks. Banning also the imports of Russian gas and other fossil fuels permanently must be finalised in the trilogues for the REPowerEU proposal next week. Sanctions must also be strengthened. Russia and its economy is reeling, so we must continue to push for support for Ukraine in order to achieve a just and lasting peace. And that peace means justice. Justice also for the kidnapped children. It means sovereignty for Ukraine. It means respect for international law, and it means also that you must pay for war crimes that you have done. Never reward aggression. We can still achieve this peace, but only if we in Europe are all united in support of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Botenga, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, you're asking for a seat at the negotiating table. In principle, I can agree with that. I think basically the EU should have a seat at the table, but then you have to tell the truth. You've done everything in your power for almost 4 years to be excluded from that position. The Vatican, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia have all been trying to be mediators. You didn't support them. We've had plans or proposals for peace from Indonesia, China, Brazil, from a delegation of African leaders who couldn't, in the end, count on support of the Europeans. And suddenly it's your favourite ally, not ours, who's leading the negotiations, and now you're upset. Well, I think it's important to say today that when Ukrainians should accept certain measures, then we should be involved. For example, on restriction of armed forces, I'm not in favour, but the Ukrainians in Istanbul in 2022 said that we wanted an army of 250,000. Trump says 600,000. Ukraine today would accept 800,000, and suddenly you're saying it's not acceptable for Europe. Are you taking the 69% of the Ukrainians seriously, who's saying they want a peaceful solution to stop this war, or we're trying to perpetrate this war further? Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Botenga. Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Goma. President, Ms. von der Leyen, colleagues, once again, Europe has not taken the initiative. Not in the negotiations, no proposals for mediation. Europe is behind the Ukrainian position. If it's justifiable morally, we can't hear that politically or diplomatically. The European are tailing the Americans. We're in the reaction, and we are reacting. We seem that we are prepared to fight until the last Ukraine. We can't guarantee peace unless you can make war. And who wants to make war? What country here will send its children to Ukraine? Don't all put your hands up. If we think we have sanctions which are got round, and the sanctions are not strong enough to make Russia give in. The resilience of the population, enough arms. The population in Ukraine has its doubts with all the corruption scandals going on. Not because we don't want, because we haven't had the capacity to do more. And that's the last point that's important. Our dependence on the Americans when it comes to resources and commandments, we are not free to decide. We must decide ourselves for ourselves. We should have a sincere rearmament. We should have things in our own hands so that we can conduct war independently. Give us credible means. As a military chief, if you can win a war, you have to be able to surprise. Let's act to create our own security architecture. Thank you.
Monsieur Omar, Vice President Picerno.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President, Madam Minister. Ukraine is not only defending its own sovereignty, its own independence, its own freedom. It's defending the principle that Europe and its borders cannot be changed by force. And every proposal which contradicts that principle is not building truth. It's simply preparing the next war. Trump's plan has nothing whatsoever to do with peace. It's built up to legitimate the Kremlin's expansion and to bring into question the very security architecture that has guaranteed stability and peace on our continent for decades. So what can we do? We have to stand together, we have to be courageous, and we have to say that peace is born of rights, not from surrender. And we have to repeat here in this hemicycle that no one can ever force us to accept an immoral text, because that's what Trump's text is. It treats European security as a variable and crimes committed by the Kremlin as a detail that can be sidelined. It's not acceptable.
Non rimandare a domani.
Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. So I would say, don't put off tomorrow and mess things up when you can actually conclude successfully today. But the rhetorics are different. The resistant Ukraine is winning. And Ms. von der Leyen here in this chamber is talking about the way the Russians are reacting and attacking us, and the sanctions that Mr. Rubio is saying is bringing Kremlin to its knees. And the mainstream is convinced how Russia is fighting tooth and nail, and we managed to attack Nord Stream 2 ourselves. So, you know, you can believe the leaflets and the propaganda, but the battlefield will tell you a different story. Yesterday, in Kupiansk and Kupovsk, there were bombs that fell. 160,000 Ukrainians during the course of 2025 alone have left their shores so as not to have to fight on the front. And these famous taxpayers' money that Ms. von der Leyen was quoting in her speech is being used to buy golden toilets and villas in Russia and yachts. So Russia is just a step away. And, I mean, if you call things by their name, then it shouldn't be Putin or Trump who will bring about an end to the war.
Mr. Mularczyk, you have the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, with all my firmness, must I say that the peace plan that is debated today gives rises to basic misgivings and criticisms from Poland and Central European states. This is rather like
Putin's wish list and not a genuine compromise between the aggressor and the offer of aggression. This is about territorial concessions to Russia and further Finlandization of Ukraine. Poland, even if it is a NATO and EU member, has borders on Ukraine, and yet it does not participate in peace talks in Geneva, in spite of the fact that we have received so many refugees. We are not at the negotiation table. How come that your protégé, Donald Tusk, whom you support so fiercely, is not present at the negotiation table, does not represent Polish state? Without Poland, there won't be a just and lasting peace. There won't be an architecture for Europe. This will be just a resting time for Russia to prepare for a new attack in 5 years' time.
Dear colleague, Mr. Novakov, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, Commissioner, I was born in People's Republic of Bulgaria. Back then, part of Soviet-dominated communist world. I don't remember much of those times, but I know one thing for sure. The system was lying for everything. Was lying that there will be a milk in the grocery stores and had lied that nothing had happened in Chernobyl. The same system that lied that nothing had happened in Katyn forest, the same system that had lied that nothing had happened in Gulag. The same system today is telling us that this is not a war and this is a special operation. So please forgive us that we are not so enthusiastic and don't believe everything they're saying. In 1925, all countries decided never to use a poison gas in combat, and yet all countries kept their gas masks. With this, I'm saying that the peace deal is up to Ukraine. It's their land and their people. We should support the victim of aggression and never stop investing in our defense capacities. We made this mistake after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We should not do the same mistake again. We should develop our own defense capacity. We should develop our own potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. La señora Temide.
Obrigada, Presidente. Caros colegas, o momento que vivemos...
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, well, these are crucial times. There is a glimmer of hope that peace may return to Ukraine, and all of us hope that will prove true. But the question is, what can be accepted as peace? What kind of peace? A just and lasting peace? The Ukrainian people have to decide that. Certain principles have to be respected. The territorial integrity of Ukraine, sovereignty in choosing their alliances and joining the EU, reconstruction through reparations, bringing back prisoners of war and children, and also calling for an immediate ceasefire. But there are things that we cannot ignore. This is about international law, basic European principles, and a peace plan that's basically a plan of non-aggression, which is being negotiated with the exclusion of European countries, and that applies to us as a bloc as well. It's unthinkable that the assets should be released without us being involved. We need peace, but not capitulation. Thank you.
Colleagues, those who want peace do not impose it on an occupied country. Those who want peace do not blame victims for their assault. Those who want a lasting peace do not normalize criminals, and those who want peace do not coach the aggressor via phone on how best to cheat on European and American people. Today, Europe faces a truly defining moment. And yes, I and we welcome the proactive stance of leaders like Merz, Macron, Meloni, Stubb and others. But where's President Costa? Where is the one who represents all of them together? Where is the European Union united? We must unite for peace. This means sanctions cannot be lifted while a single Russian boot stands on Ukrainian soil. We must unite for peace. This means accountability cannot be negotiated away. International law is not a bargaining chip. We must unite for peace. Europe must act now decisively. Enlargement is the biggest currency we have. We must send a clear message, and the clearest we have is an accelerated path for Ukraine, including Article 42 that would protect Ukraine as a member of the European Union. We must do it for Ukraine, we must do it for ourselves.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Mr. Volgin, you have the floor.
Уважаеми колеги,
colleagues, the war in Ukraine will only end when there is an official document signed by all the stakeholders that says that this country will not join NATO. NATO's neutrality is the most steady guarantee for peace in Europe. This, however, the renunciation of NATO membership for Ukraine, is absent from the so-called European peace plan. Why? Because the authors of that peace plan actually want the war to continue. The longer the better. Thus, they will continue to frighten us with the Russian threat, and more importantly, will be making the European Union into a military organization where all the money goes into rearmament. These are not people with a strategic vision for Europe. These are the salespeople of the military-industrial complex whose main fare is death. And while European citizens' money sink into the pockets of corrupt Ukrainian and European officials, our so-called leaders are drawing up absurd peace plans. Why? Because their main purpose is the continuation of war.
From the EPP group, Mr. Kanev, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Dear Mr. Volgin, I've been fascinated to hear from the far left and the far right praise of a so-called peace plan by Trump, while others who grew up in the East and learned some Russian know that it is rather a bad translation from Russian. Don't you think that your point on Ukraine's neutrality is also a bad translation from the Russian? Mr. Kanev, because both of us lived in those so-called communist days, and because they did lie to us at that time, as Mr. Novakov has just said, what the Union is doing now is very similar to what the Central Committee of the Communist Party was doing then, called black, white, and white, black, peace, war, and war, peace. That this peace plan being Russian doesn't stand to scrutiny. I mean, you should not be misled. I thought higher of you, Mr. Novakov. And us, as citizens of the European Union, must work for peace. And all calls for more weapons and money for Ukraine will make this war last longer.
You have the floor.
Europe is at war. Acts of sabotage in Poland, violations of airspace, disinformation confirm this every day. Times of war clarify moral choices and attitudes. Everyone can decide how they want to be remembered, as a traitor destroying European unity or as a builder of security. Donald Tusk said here in the Parliament, Europe must believe in its own strength. We have accepted this task. Poland is present. We have built the SAFE instrument. We have 180 billion Polish zloty from the EU for Poland's security. We do not consent to a new world order dictated by Russia. We do not accept impunity for Amelka's murderers. The aggressor must be accountable for his crimes. Europe is strong in its alliances and unity. We invest in our defense capabilities. But the Law and Justice Party government
marginalized our position through alliances with Orban and Fico. It pushed for the construction of a power plant fueled by Russian coal. That is over now. The return of Donald Tusk is a return to ambitious politics. Thanks to the Polish presidency, Europe has focused on security. Dear friends, let's not panic. This is what Russia wants. Let's distinguish signals from noise. Let's nurture transatlantic cooperation. Allies must work together, but their envoys cannot be good advisors to our enemy. Europe, show your strength.
From Mr. Mularsik from the DCR Group, you don't accept it. Okay, thank you. Mi siguiente orador es el señor Sánchez Amor. Sorry, dear colleague, he hasn't accepted the blue card, so he's entitled to do that. Mr. Sánchez Amor.
Gracias.
Thank you, President. Well, I think there are two important points that are being left behind. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine in a way that we forget the basic thing, that right now, as in 22, there's an aggressor and a victim. And that brings in a moral judgment that we have to maintain, because we can't defend talking about the wins of the aggressor and vice versa. I think that really we have to do what is just, morally speaking, in Europe. It's like a teacher going out into the playground in a school and trying to sort out a fight and forcing the victim to give his sandwich to the aggressor. That's what we're seeing happening, basically. So we have to look at the international situation, because we could end up with protectorates and changes in the spheres of influence which have done such harm to international law. Thank you.
Everybody has said it, or almost, and we share this. It's neither desirable or in our interest that the treaty to end this war is the history of our peoples knows what it means to be wiped off the map. Ukraine shouldn't be kidnapped by Russia again. It's simplistic to starkly oppose morals and realism, but it's dangerous to ignore the realities. There's no military solution to this conflict which would end up in a decisive Ukrainian victory. We're talking about diplomacy, and not for the pleasure of writing self-satisfying resolutions, but with a view to reach a peace agreement which will be signed by the two parties in the conflict, Ukraine and Russia. Brilliant European minds have shown that it's necessary to have limits to the war, that it's dangerous to refuse to let the other party to be an interlocutor and to consider its destruction as the only possible outcome. Denying this interactional dimension which exists in war, it means that making the conditions for peace impossible. We should get away from the deplorable dilemma proposed in this hemicycle between pacifism and full war. If the peace is the objectives, is a game. It takes two to tango, and it's time that this reality is not ignored or is not ignored.
The peace agreement comes years too late. The warmongering bureaucracy in the EU thought that they could win a war with money, with badly thought out sanctions, and a people who's willing to sacrifice for those who see war as a video game. Now we're on the close of bankruptcy, and Russia is even more threatening and determined to crush Ukraine, and the money is going into the hands of corrupt people. Corruption, dirty secrets have overshadowed peace. But for the EU, war is a good choice. Ukraine, a country in shatters, is full of clandestine weapons. When Ukrainians understand that they were just cannon fodder, they will want revenge. Maybe they will set up an alliance with Russians, and we will wonder, when are we going to put an end to these warmongers? Thank you.
You have the floor.
Colleagues, Commissioner, how much humiliation does Europe have to suffer before we wake up and approach this differently? After the humiliating summer of 2025, when Trump foisted his 15% tariff on us that we had to swallow, once again, another humiliating development that we have to swallow, so-called peace plan for Ukraine, a plan that, colleagues, is basically just a diktat from Washington and Moscow, where Russia's being rewarded for its aggression and Ukraine is being forced to amputate both its territory and its army. Putin and Trump sit down together, and we, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a common European reaction at hand. This Trump peace is not a peace, it's a capitulated settlement. And that is painful for Ukrainians who've been fighting and suffering for Europe, for our freedom. And it just shows once again how shows clearly how weak we are. Let us address this humiliation to turn things around. Let's start saying no to Trump. Let's start demanding of Putin that he stops the hybrid attacks on Europe, that he respects international law, and that the kidnapped children be freed. Ladies and gentlemen, it has to become clear. If we are not able to speak with one voice, we can't push for the European pillar within NATO. If we can't even provide for our own European defence, then we're going to be irrelevant. And that will affect peace on our territory and our citizens. Let us do a little bit more now.
From Mr. Gratsoulis from the ESN Group. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Then we go to Mr. Madison. You have the floor.
Yes, thanks so much, dear colleagues. Good morning. Anyway, I really believe that long-term and a fair peace currently being talked is not possible, not now. But it is possible to achieve a peace for some certain period, especially for resting time, and the peace for Ukrainian people and the fighters to keep and maintain the dignity and the statehood, what is the most important thing ever. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget that Russia has not given up its demands for so-called security guarantees that they presented to the USA on December 15, 2021, 2 months before attacking Ukraine. And with those demands, they demanded directly there should be no military exercises in the new NATO member states. There should be no new member states like Finland, who's a now member state. And they have never, ever given up those demands. So the peace for the future, for the long term, it is not possible, realistically. But at the same time, we have to get the peace for some certain period for Ukraine. And at the same time, Europe has to forget all the small talk bullshit about the green ideology, about the beautiful things, and we have to prepare to protect ourselves, to keep the security. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Madam Rigorova, you have the floor.
Vážení kolegové.
Dear colleagues, after reading the 28-point peace plan, we collectively held our breaths, and that was good, because this was not a plan to negotiate. This was Putin's shopping list, and Washington now knows that this is not the way. It's very good that we've proposed our own points, realistic security guarantees, a strong Ukrainian army, and instead of giving Donbass, the rest of Donbass, to the Russians without fighting, the Ukraine will try to regain the occupied territories diplomatically while the rest of the country goes back to normal. Anything that the Ukrainians agree with, I can agree with, because this is about them. But I want to remind everyone, dear colleagues, that until we have a signed peace plan, Ukrainians need a negotiating table that they can sit at. They don't need a country that's been bombarded the hell out of. And to attain this can only be done by military support. Drone systems, anti-drone systems, missiles and rockets. Without that, we can only talk about a peace plan. With this, the Russians wouldn't be in Lviv and in Kiev. Let's hold our positions. Thank you.
Mr. De La Valle, you have the floor.
President, the EU has to decide whether it wants to with peace or continue as it is, maybe even sending its own people to fight this war that's been going on too long. The peace agreement could be just around the corner, it's true, but we know that the last mile is always the hardest. It is, maybe even sending its own people to fight this war that's been going on too long. The peace agreement could be just around the corner, it's true, but we know they're going to try again, and the saboteurs are always working in the shadows. Meloni, von der Leyen, Macron, everyone has betted on the military defeat of Russia because Russia's war basically without the rearm EU, it would all have been collapsed. If you haven't understood, the fact is that with this strategy, you have lost the war. But unfortunately, it's been trumped to show your irrelevance to the world. It's obvious that it's not going to be Brussels, Paris or London to decide and determine the future of Ukraine. In Istanbul, the EU lost the opportunity to show that it's something still. But I think you do better to leave space for compromise because a poor peace is better than the alternative or from a dirty war, which is yours. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Señor Burgallo.
Gracias, Presidente. Dear colleagues, a Portuguese poet once...
Thank you, President.
Today, we may not know what tomorrow will bring, but we know this. A true peace strengthens the invaded, not the invader. After 4 years of fighting, Ukraine has the right to keep what they fought so hard to defend and to recover what Russia took by force. After 4 years of fighting, we cannot tell the Ukrainians that Russia's war crimes will end with a Russian peace. They will not. If geography is not enough for us to see it, history should be. And in their history, every time Ukraine has agreed on disarmament, their sovereignty was compromised. Fellow members, a peace deal that disarms Ukraine will only empower Putin. If we have no Ukraine in NATO and no NATO in Ukraine, we will have Russia in Europe. We may not know what tomorrow will bring, but we know this. To defend Ukraine is not only to defend democracy and international law. To defend Ukraine is to defend Estonian schools, Lithuanian hospitals, Polish homes and Finnish families. To defend Ukraine is to defend Europe. And nothing can be achieved, no Draghi report, no common market, no secured borders, if we give in to Moscow. Europe must be willing to talk, but not to yield. We are eager for peace as long as it doesn't mean more war. We may not know what tomorrow will bring, but we must be ready for it. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Bugallo. Monsieur Germain.
Monsieur le Commissaire.
Commissioner, Minister, Ukraine is encountering one of the most difficult junctures in its history. That's what Mr. Zelensky is saying, reacting to Mr. Trump's approach. Occupation of territory, refusal of being able to join NATO, not using frozen assets, reduction of their troops, and undermining security, which is already fragile. This is a plan that's been concocted by the White House and basically just panders to the Russian demands. Regardless of who's at the center of this photo, we have to make sure that we can turn a capitulation of 28 points to a 19-point compromise. Europe is expected at this time, because we are the prime financiers of the war chest here. So if we haven't worked out how to use the frozen assets, we need to look at the 140 billion that need to go to Ukraine by 2026, 2027 through the European Court. I think there's no better place for Ms. von der Leyen, for the taxpayer of helping fund this war to stop Ukrainians falling on the front line. Russia will be pressing us. We can only go as far as they allow us, so we need to turn this around, allow Ukrainians to be free.
Dear colleagues, for 2 years you couldn't mention the word peace in Brussels. It was a swear word. Diplomatic steps were not seen as a duty but as a mistake. Anyone who was asking for pragmatic solutions was rejected, made fun of, or labeled as pro-Russian. And now these same people who were doing this are trying to catch up to the world superpowers, finding a way forward without Europe. This isn't leadership, this is failure. Europe has been sleeping, it has not been pragmatic, it did not want peace. While Brussels was hiding in its safety of activism, the others were acting. And today, Europe is idly standing by at debates where our security is decided. Europe is one of the largest financial supporters of Ukraine. In many cases, this was support without any clear or finite plans on using these monies. Ukraine has to fight corruption. It has to set transparent procedures so that all aid goes where it's needed. The original American peace plans are detrimental to Europe in many ways. For example, the USA getting its share of the frozen Russian assets, or the expected participation of Europe on post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. However, the EU needs a stable Ukraine. We need a peace solution on strong fundaments and with strong security guarantees. The PFE has been saying from the very start, talking about peace is not a weakness, it is our duty. Europe needs solid, pragmatic diplomacy, open negotiations with the USA, and a long-term plan for security in our eastern neighborhood. If Europe is to be relevant again, it needs to stop rejecting pragmatism. It needs to be pragmatic. Thank you.
Speaker is Mr. Jaki for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, as the classicist told you, it is a madness to do all the same things all the time and expect new results. Well, war was a sum of the vanity of European leaders, the Minsk agreement, mind you, and now the better off are in Geneva and the rest of Europe was simply brushed aside. So it's like naivety, it's like not learning lessons. Russia has not changed. It's not going to abide by any agreement. But yet, there are people who believe in it. Well, you are all flexing your muscles and say how you are against Putin and in favor of peace. But you really don't remember things. When the war broke out, you didn't want to do anything. You just provided Ukrainians with helmets, nothing more. And nobody was held accountable for resets with Russia. So no sustainable peace is available unless Russia is defeated, unless it is deterred, and Russia is not keeping its promises and excluding the countries that are most at risk from the decision-making process.
Speaker for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, President. Colleagues. Wie wil er geen vrede?
Who doesn't want peace? Peace for our time. Who could be against that? The question is just how are we going to achieve that peace for our time? Are we going to achieve it with this 28-point plan from Mr. Putin, communicated by Mr. Trump, supported by the far left and far right in this chamber, and the capitulation plan as it was in the Sudetenland in 1938. Peace in our time was a quote from Mr. Chamberlain. We know how that ended. Can we trust Putin's word? He's already ignored and violated tens of international treaties. Of course we can't. So what should the point of departure be? Genuine security guarantees for Ukraine, a guarantee of the sovereignty of Ukraine. That is the only way to guarantee peace. But it's a lesson for us too here, ladies and gentlemen. Europe doesn't have hard power. We're a bystander. We're not an actor. We're not a protagonist. And we are not able to help out in Ukraine. It's only through a true European defence that we can guarantee a lasting defence and freedom for Europe. Let us work at that.
Next speaker is Mr. Van Laanschot for 1 minute, please.
The 28-point plan was written in Kremlin handwriting while they keep killing Ukrainian civilians every single day. A complete disgrace. The gangsters leading the US and Russia try to impose a modern-day Molotov-Ribbentrop pact on Europe, a pretext for more war. 1 minute to midnight, Europe arrived to support Ukraine, trying to prevent the disaster. But European leaders, how much more evidence do you need that dictators don't respect flattery, only strength? How much more evidence do you need that with 27 little armies, 27 foreign ministers, and the vetocracy in council, we are at the gangsters' mercy? How much more evidence do you need that a peace that lasts will only come if we enable Ukraine to win? This resolution is the same routine. It complains about America and Russia, but it mentions almost nothing about what we will do. Ukraine's security is Europe's security. Let's get out of this inferiority complex. We have what it takes to become what the USA no longer is, a united democracy defending freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Stoyanov for 1 minute, please.
Благодаря, госпожо председател. Вярвам, че сме в навечерието на преломен момент и дипломатическите усилия на Съединените щати и Руската федерация.
Thank you. I believe we are at a turning point, and I wish success to all those working to end the bloodshed. Of all the proposals put forward, President Trump's plan is the most realistic one and offers a way ahead. The lifting of sanctions set out in it is a step that I welcome, and it is a good time for the EU to adopt a constructive approach, act proactively, and support this initiative. Peace through diplomacy is the stronger option than peace through war. Nobody wants war. And peace could have been achieved already in Istanbul, but that opportunity was wasted. And the conditions for Ukraine at the time would have been much better than today, and hundreds of thousands of lives could have been saved. A better time for peace than now there will not be. Let us learn the lessons of Istanbul and support diplomatic efforts in the name of peace.
Speaker is Ms. Rod Nevedalova for 1 minute, please.
Ďakujem, pani predsednička. Vážené kolegyne, kolegovia, mali by sme...
Thank you, colleagues. We should stop behaving like a sulking teenager not invited to a party. We should seriously negotiate peace. It's not us setting the conditions. I think it's now time focusing on peace and diplomacy, but accepting any plan that both parties are willing to negotiate. We have not really moved an inch. The war is still going on. Thousands of people are dying. Cities are being destroyed. Infrastructure is being destroyed. The economic crisis is worse and worse. Instability as well. When we lie to ourselves that Ukraine is our partner, that this is our war, that's one thing. But we see at the same time that we're pumping money into Ukraine, and the corruption apparently is blooming. They are not upholding the minority rights, religious rights. Now this is enough. It's high time for us to be part of the peace solution, and we should really not come up with more and more problems.
And we have now come to the 7th round of speakers, and I give the floor to Mr. Toviri for 1.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. The now infamous 28-point peace plan started a series of negotiations that are still ongoing. Everybody knows, or at least they should know here, that this is not a serious attempt to reach a peace from Russian side. This is just Putin's attempt to delay and win time to kill more Ukrainians, and unfortunately it works. Nobody talks about planned new sanctions to Russia anymore. Putin doesn't want peace. But to make a peace, we need Russia genuinely to participate in real negotiations and willing to give up its ambitions to destroy Ukraine as an independent sovereign nation. Therefore, now it's time to force Russia to come to the table. And EU can help this to happen by hitting Russia's already crumbling economy. Now it's time to stop the shadow fleet. Now it's time to stop funding Putin's war by buying Russian oil, gas and minerals. Now it's time to sanction all Russian oligarchs, also those who are doing business in member states. Now it's time to stop allowing our businesses to evade sanctions through third countries.
And now it's time to sanction those companies and countries that support Russia's war fighting. Let's do our part so that the brave Ukrainian fighting also for our freedom and security can have a peace they truly deserve. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Kramer for 1 minute, please.
Colleagues, I want nothing more than these peace negotiations to succeed. But let's be honest, these 28 points weren't a peace plan. They were Putin's Christmas list to Santa Claus. They asked Ukraine to surrender what Putin has failed to conquer in a decade and to weaken Ukrainian defenses in a way that will only invite future war, future aggression from Russia. And dismantling Ukraine wasn't even the biggest gift under little Vladimir's Christmas tree. The real price is that this plan would have not just thrown Ukraine, but Europe under the bus. Colleagues, we keep saying nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, nothing about Europe without Europe, but we are not acting like it. Instead, we keep hoping that the Americans might sweep in and save the day. But spoiler alert, they won't. If we want real peace in Europe, we cannot count on Trump any more than we can on Santa Claus. If we want real peace in Europe, we must take responsibility ourselves and force Putin to the negotiating table, but not through appeasement, but through strength. If we want real peace in Europe, we need to take the initiative now as Europe and use Russia's frozen assets as a leverage for peace. Colleagues, the time for wish lists is over. Now is the time to act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Ferenc for 1 minute, please.
Pászka Zoltán, Rácz Attila, Lecó Zsolt.
Zoltán Pászka, Opilan Rácz, Zsolt Lecó. These are just a few of the Hungarians who have died in the war. They're all Hungarians from Transcarpathia, just where I'm from. I'm sure their parents would have a word or two to say to military leaders in Europe and how to react to this sort of approach. I think the answer is that we haven't been preparing for this. We've seen this war raging for almost 4 years. Many families have lost members of their families in this war, and you're telling us that this peace plan isn't good enough. You're financing this war while people in Ukraine are putting their own lives at risk. That's a very cynical approach. When was the last time you met those involved? When did you last ask them if they wanted war or peace? Once again, we have an opportunity for peace. We have to grasp it.
Yes, Mr. Inselvini for 1 minute, please.
Finalmente uno spiraglio.
Finally, there's a glimmer of light, the possibility of giving voice to diplomacy and laying down arms to achieve just and lasting peace in Ukraine. It's a shame that once again this brave initiative hasn't come from the EU, but we have instead to thank Trump's USA that is trying with their long-sightedness and bravery. So we've seen what's happened with the Middle East as well. Someone here in the national government is always irritated by the possibility of putting end to the tragedy of an ongoing war. The peace plan from Trump is not perfect, but even if Zelensky is ready to sit at the table on the basis of this proposal, it's clear that there is no other possibility or solution for the EU than to make itself available to bring the negotiations to a good outcome. This is the last hope for millions. Let's grasp that hope together, guaranteeing the future of Ukraine, security in Europe, and pushing aside the war approach of people who want escalation and a return to 1914.
Here is Vice President González Pons for 1.5 minutes, please.
Dear colleagues, the peace plan put forward by the US administration offers a possible path to end the war. But it also brings serious risk for the future of Ukraine and Europe if it is not built with clarity, certainty and courage. Talks started in Geneva and will continue for the next days, but the European Union cannot and must not be silent. Europe should talk about enlargement, sanctions or the immobilized assets. Those can be negotiated without us. We want peace, but not peace at any price. Not if that peace reduces the safety for our Union or our member states. Not if that peace humiliates the Ukrainian people and leaves them open to a future slavery. Not if that peace does not return Ukrainian children to their families where they belong. Not if that peace fails to bring war criminals to justice. Not if that peace becomes one more appeasement of a tyrant. Not if that peace means surrender, because democracy can only win. This is about giving back Belarus to freedom, not about losing it in Ukraine. Dear colleagues, our work must continue, united and with a joint and strong voice. Let the world know where we are, where we stand together till the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Guzenina for 1 minute, please.
Dear President, history teaches us hard lessons. 1925, Germany signed the Locarno Treaties. 34, the Non-Aggression Pact with Poland. 38, the Munich Agreement. All presented as peace efforts, all used to buy time for further aggression. So let's not forget, not every peace is a real peace. Today, we face similar risk. The United States is leading talks on a proposal for Ukraine, and we see clearly what Russia is willing to accept, so clearly that Washington had to explain that the plan was not written by Putin. It is the US and Russia who are shaping the talks and setting the terms. The agreement would limit Ukraine's army while Russia rebuilds its own. The agreement offers amnesties for war crimes and forces territorial concessions.
Thank you very much.
Europe must stand up. We will not agree.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Madame Loiseau for 1.5 minutes, please.
Madame la Présidente.
President, colleagues, the American peace plan for Ukraine is not American, it's Russian. And it's not proposing peace, but rather capitulation. It's not a plan, it's a business plan. Nonetheless, 3 European countries rushed to Geneva, pressed and forced to be at the table rather than being left outside, and tried to improve the American plan. But that's a historic mistake to accept even the logic underlying the Trump plan. In my area, we know that you can pour perfume on a pile of manure, but it's still manure. And talking about the Ukrainian army and reducing its numbers, whereas it's the Russian army that is a threat, is ridiculous. So it's no point trying to change the commas with a bad text in Geneva. We know what we have to do. We have to use the frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, protect the skies above Ukrainian cities by organizing defense and using the neighboring NATO countries. We have to help Ukraine to achieve a just, dignified and lasting peace, not drag it into a shameful situation which would solve nothing and which would affect our own security.
For 1 minute, please.
Fru talman. Madam President, we can see 2 imperialist superpowers, Russia and the US, who are trying to foist onto Ukraine an unjust peace. They set aside international law, they reward the aggressor, and they're lining their pockets. The Cold War's language and logic about the spheres of interest have come back. This is something that must be rejected No negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine at the table. Ukraine's proposal for a ceasefire is the realistic way to proceed. Sanctions against Russia must continue in full force until Russia has withdrawn from the entire territory of Ukraine. No amnesty for war criminals. Continued support for Ukraine in economic terms, political terms and military terms. Thank you.
Tack så mycket.
Thank you.
And we will now start the 8th and last round of speakers before Catch the Eye, and we will begin with Mr. Terras for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice President. Dear colleagues, the initial White House capitulation plan prepared by Russia, which completely and shamelessly ignores dozens of rules of international law, cannot be basis for realistic negotiations. Europe's future cannot be decided without Europe. Ukraine's destiny cannot be decided without Ukraine. It is time for European countries, in cooperation with Ukraine, to propose just, permanent and lasting peace. This could be a coalition of willing plus non-Euro countries if there is no consensus for joint EU action. This House must urge Presidents von der Leyen and Costa to work out a way to use frozen Russian assets immediately, and needlessly to say, all Member States must stop financing the Russian war machine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Vice President Negrescu for 1 minute, please.
Dear Commissioner, dear Vice President, the US proposal for a peace plan marks an important moment. Any initiative that can bring an end to Russia's brutal war must be examined seriously, but should come with guarantees for Ukraine's sovereignty and Europe's security. Nevertheless, Russia sent drones again over Romanian territory. These incidents are a reminder of the challenges faced by frontline countries. The Black Sea has become a strategic target, and the EU and the US must provide, in any peace agreement, clear security guarantees for the eastern flank. We cannot afford ambiguity. At the same time, the Republic of Moldova and several EU countries face constant hybrid threats and attacks aimed at destabilizing their democracies. Supporting our resilience must be a central element of any European engagement for a just and lasting peace. Europe, together with our US partner, must remain united and firm. Any peace plan must uphold international law, ensure real security guarantees, and prevent dangerous concessions that would threaten the stability of our region. A responsible, shared and durable peace is the only path that protects our citizens and our common values. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. De Mutter for 1 minute, please.
Some weeks ago, the economists show banknotes, and it said the great opportunity for Europe. So Europe is stumping up to be the financing. You're fulfilling this expectations. 187 billion has been spent, and now you want to have an even larger sum within the MFF, and then you want to take on board debt too. Your war fixation shows that you're not taking the opportunity of peace negotiations. You've taken the word peace out of the title of this debate. When the war ends, Europe will be in a weaker position economically and in its self-esteem. And if you ask who is responsible for this, Ursula von der Leyen and all those who did this madness here. You are the ones who are destroying Europe.
Catch the Eye. And the next speaker is Mr. Terhes for 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. In 2008, when few Western countries blocked the clear path to NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia, the Russian leadership interpreted it as a weakness, and weakness always invites aggression. Only months later, Russia invaded Georgia, demonstrating that Kremlin was fully prepared to wage war in the 21st century to subjugate European free and sovereign nations. The world's weak response opened the door for further escalation. In 2014, Russia struck again, annexing Crimea and invading eastern Ukraine. The full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine launched in 2022 is a direct consequence of years of appeasement in which the West ignored Moscow's repeated aggressions and convinced itself that rewarding aggression or doing business with the aggressor somehow would keep the peace. It did the opposite. Supporting Ukraine defend its sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity is not charity. It's an investment in Europe's security and in lasting peace on our continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Kelly for 1 minute, please.
Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Appeasing bullies won't stop wars. Yes, we need a plan to end this war, to end the destruction and the violence, but how we bring that about matters. This is not a surrender. There can be no decisions made without Ukraine and without Europe. Russia does not get to dictate the future security of Ukraine or of Europe. The fundamental principle that borders cannot be changed by force remains paramount. And under no ceasefire agreement should the front lines be frozen where they currently are. Creating peace by granting Russia all its demands is not the way we do business in Europe. To do so would only encourage other authoritarian regimes to attack neighbouring countries in the sure knowledge that for the sake of peace they'd be given more land. And as Ursula von der Leyen pointed out, this would lead to more wars in due course. We need a real peace plan, not a capitulation plan. Slava Ukraine, Ukraine Abu.
Mr. Kelly, thank you very much. There is a blue card from Mr. Grasulis. Do you want to take it?
Okay,
yes, please. Seat 525.
Mr. You represent the biggest group in the European Parliament, in the governing majority. The Commission President is from your group. Aren't you ashamed that you are only discussing, making resolutions, but do not provide the necessary military, diplomatic or other support to Ukraine, but only blame Mr. Trump? You are not showing all the necessary things that you have to do.
Yeah, this is not about blame. This is about being realistic. The plan proposed by the US in the name of Donald Trump makes no sense. It's a capitulation. And without the support of Europe, both in terms of taking in refugees and supporting Ukraine in the war, they would have been overrun long ago by Russia. Peace, to be realistic, has to be fair, and particularly fair to those who are suffering. And in this instance, it's Ukraine that's suffering. Russia started the war, and that mustn't be forgotten.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Karlsruhe. For 1 minute, please.
Madam President, colleagues, day and night, Russia continues to terrorize and kill Ukrainian people and destroy homes and infrastructure. Since the beginning of the war, it has been clear Russia must pay. Europe must make use of the frozen assets, and we must increase our own financial contributions. It's not a question of either or. Since 2022, tariff-free trade with the EU has served as an economic lifeline for Ukraine. This commitment must stand firm until Ukraine is a full member of the European Union. Today, Ukraine is our front line. Ukrainians defend our freedom. We must show the same commitment to them. We stand with Ukraine.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Sienkiewicz for 1 minute, please.
Dear Commissioner, dear colleagues, let's be very clear. The so-called peace plan is not a peace at all. It forces Ukraine to concede territory, forgives war crimes such as rape, killings of civilians, 20,000 abducted children, and just rewards the aggressor. It can be called a business plan. But here in Europe, we don't sell our dignity and freedom. It also can be seen as a license to continue. And if you look at the Russian position, when it's the best time to test us, when it's the best time to attack Europe? Right now, when we are still not ready, when we are still discussing on our military capabilities, on frozen assets, on continuous support to Ukraine, right now is the best time to test us with such business deal that the US is offering.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Neuhoff for 1 minute, please.
Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Colleagues, you can imagine whatever you like in your heads, but as long as you refuse to look at the Russian perspective, as long as you continue to do that, the Ukraine conflict won't be solved. You will just drag it out, and that will hurt Ukraine. A workable peace plan must look at the root causes of the Russian invasion. That means Ukraine as a neutral bloc, no entry into NATO, no nuclear weapon for Ukraine, and no NATO troops in Ukraine. As long as we don't have these issues addressed, the war will be continued by Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, we admire Switzerland for its neutrality. Back in 1815, there was the Vienna conflict, which made Switzerland a buffer zone, because that was what the major powers wanted. Ukraine could become a Switzerland of the East. But the question is, do you even want that?
Card from Mr. Brandstetter. Do you want to take it? Thank you, Mr. Brandstetter.
Wait.
Herr Neuhoff, Sie waren ja gerade.
You were in Sochi, in Russia. Not everyone was very enthusiastic about that, and you met Medvedev, and you spoke to Russians. They're always threatening to send things to Berlin and so on. Then there was a quote from Lucas. It says that hardly anybody knows that I am working so passionately for Russia's victory as Mr. Neuhoff. What would you say about that quote? And would you want to take colleagues to Russia?
Herr Kollege, zu Ihren konkreten Fragen.
Colleague, the concrete question. We did not meet with Mr. Medvedev. So the wish of the party leaders was respected, but that wasn't what it was even about at the conference. The invitation, it was about looking at BRICS, EU relations, and MEPs should therefore logically be taking part in such a conference. You have the possibility to look at every single one of the speeches I've given. I'm neither pro-Russian nor anti-Russian. I'm just a realist. For that reason, here in this parliament, I have always pleaded for a realistic solution, as I just did in my speech.
So I don't see Mr. Mixer in the room, so we will now go to Catch the Eye. And colleagues, thanks to your relative discipline, we have there is a likelihood that I can take all the Catch the Eye. I have 16 or 17s. Not all are here in the room, but I will try to accommodate it. So if you stick to your speaking time, 1 minute, we can take, hopefully, all of the colleagues. And we start with Mr. Jonsky, seat 494, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. In this chamber today, we are talking about the 28 points of the peace plan for Ukraine. But let's call a spade a spade. This is not a peace plan. This is a document which is not going to end the war, but will only allow for a division of Ukraine and will only make the whole of the EU weaker. Today, we know very well who wrote it. It was dictated by the Kremlin. You cannot build peace by rewarding the aggressor. Enforcing the concessions for the murder will not bring silence, but yet more demands on the part of the Kremlin. This would be only a short-lasting peace, and it would open doors for yet more and more attacks. I want you to hear today that we want peace that guarantees security and safety for Ukraine and for the whole of Europe. Europe cannot succumb to force. We need to be on the side of justice, freedom and solidarity, because only then will the peace will be true and long-lasting. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Mr. Lopez Aguilar, seat 316, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Comisión, en este debate sobre...
In this debate on the badly carried through peace plan, we've got the first source, which is the first reality. We've got the conversations between Trump and Putin. That's what they say. But the EU hasn't been invited and nor has been listened to. And we can't change the behavior of the Putin regime. And at the same time, we don't want to be a tenant in the White House. We've got Viktor Orban and Robert Fico as well. And what we need to do is carry out the sanctions that have been adopted instead of adopting a whole new package every 2 months, which is inefficient. What we can do is strengthen our unity. We can do this by protecting the judges, protecting the International Criminal Court as well against Putin. They're being threatened not just by Putin, but also by Trump. And so we need to strengthen our unity by deciding for once and for all on the mobilization of the financial assets that have been confiscated from Russia for financing not just the Ukrainian war effort, but also reconstruction. Thank you very much.
And the next speaker is Ms. Gosiewska, seat 686, please.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. This debate is not only about the EU's position towards the proposed peace plan. Our credibility is at stake. Can we go along with the solution that will reward the aggressor and punish the victim? Can we pretend to build our European safety on a situation in which Ukraine is tying its own hands and Russia is not held accountable for the havoc it wreaked in Ukraine? What about the soldiers who were defending their country? Should they just go back home, come to terms with the fact that Crimea and Donbas are lost? What will we say to the Tatars? What will we tell the children who lost their parents? Will we say that they have died in vain, that they are just as responsible as Putin? We need to stand with Ukraine. This is a rotten compromise. We need to cherish the memory of the victims. This is a rotten compromise, telling Putin that aggression pays off, which puts Poland into a dangerous situation.
Is 1 minute, please. The next speaker is Mr. Salimas, seat 324, please.
Thank you. Dear Commissioner, dear colleagues, we must be clear. Any agreement that rewards aggression would not bring peace. It would send us several centuries backwards, legitimizing violence as a tool in international relations. International law is explicit. When a serious breach of a fundamental norm of jus cogens occurs, and Russia's war of aggression is precisely that, no state may recognize as lawful the situation created by that breach, nor render aid or assistance to the aggressor. Instead, states must cooperate to bring this breach to an end. This means no recognition of illegal annexation, no territorial concessions, no any other proposals that would allow anyone to make a business deal out of this aggression. A just peace can only rest on firm foundations: full territorial integrity of Ukraine, full reparations to Ukraine, full criminal responsibility for the crime of aggression. These are not negotiating positions. They are international legal obligations incumbent on Russia.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Saramo, seat 230, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. If it looks like a Russian asset, talks like a Russian asset, and acts like a Russian asset, then it probably is a Russian asset. We can only guess why, but Donald Trump has always done what Vladimir Putin wanted. Of course, Putin is not the only one. Trump has shown his admiration for other authoritarian leaders who have blood on their hands. He does not bring peace, only new tensions, and he rewards killing. We Finns, we tried until the very end to build friendship and stability with Putin's Russia. But imperialist delusions, they cannot be answered by reason. Capitulation to Putin and Trump would bring new occupations and new wars. Dear colleagues, Europe must do everything to support Ukraine and cut off the US leash. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Grasuli, seat 525, please.
Dear Europeans, blame yourselves and not Trump. If you were determined and principled and not just talked and passed resolutions, if you depended Ukraine, Putin would not have dared to invade Ukraine. But he knew your leftist gender politics, which is not determined and not principled. You are the ones to blame. You are to blame for Ukraine's suffering today. For 4 years it has not been defended. If you were principled, you would say to Trump, it's not your business. We will end the war without you. And what are you doing? Aren't you ashamed for such undetermined position? Please brace yourselves. Please suggest your plan without Trump and demand Putin to end the war. What have you done? What are you doing? It's precisely nothing.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Mr. Stier, seat 675, please.
Thank you, Vice President. Dear colleagues, the Commission President said today that the pressure should be put on the aggressor, not on the victim. And I fully agree with that. But then we need to move from words to action. And that means, among other things, that we should ban the import not only of gas, but also of oil. That is the position of this Parliament, and it's about time that the Council also agrees on that position to ban all the imports of Russian oil starting on January 2026. The Commission knows very well that all the technical conditions are there for the Member States that are still importing oil from Russia to replace that, using, for example, the Adriatic pipeline. They can do that. All the technical conditions are there. It's just a question of political will. So we need to move from words to action, because actions, that means far more than words. That speaks louder than any words. Acta, non verba.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Andriukaitis, seat 179, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Commissioner, the shameful 28-point Trump's plan is heavily skewed in favor for the Kremlin. A sustainable peace for Ukraine must be based on, first, full respect of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, second, full respect of Ukraine's right to choose its alliances, third, full Russian accountability for the war crimes and crime of aggression. Fourth, non-negotiable Russian payments for the massive damage caused in Ukraine. The ambivalence of President Trump's policy towards Ukraine is shameful and detrimental to the objective of achieving sustainable peace for Ukraine. A pact at the expense of Ukraine and the EU would jeopardize decades-long transatlantic partnerships on common security and prosperity. Now we need to urgently ask EU member states and international partners to join our efforts in their military support as well as their political and diplomatic efforts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Tynkkynen, seat 210, please.
Arvoisa puhemies, tällä salilla.
Madam President, this hemicycle really is not speaking very well. It says that it's doing everything for Ukraine, but that is nonsense. During the first term, Trump said to Europe that we needed to improve our defence so we can protect ourselves. We did not do that. Trump said that Nord Stream should not be built, but it was done nonetheless. And now, during this war in Ukraine, the EU has even been buying more Russian gas than before. Belgium doesn't want to use the frozen Russian assets. Germany didn't want to provide weapons. And we have created a situation ourselves where Ukraine is perhaps going to lose parts of its territory. It is going into environment. The priorities are the right ones here.
8-9, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The huge majority in Europe wants peace, and the huge majority in this House wants peace. But Putin wants war, and the right-wing extremists support Putin. I did not hear one critical word about Putin. They support the war criminal. And the US, Witkoff, he's not a negotiator. He wants to make deals with his former friends in Russia, and that is dangerous for Europe, and we must understand that. And then I heard from Hungarians about corruption in Ukraine. Yes, there is corruption in Ukraine, but there are very strong institutions, NABU and SAP, they are fighting corruptions. So I ask the people from Hungary here, the Orban people, go to Ukraine, go to Kiev, look how it is to fight corruption instead of being corrupt, and then you will have a huge advantage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Oliveira, seat 125, please.
President, Mr. Dombrovskis, we don't really know what Trump's plan is for Ukraine or how it could end the war. We have some official information on the EU stance, and what we've heard in this debate is the repetition of arguments that will drag out the war, and Ukraine is a pretext to further militarize the EU. We talk about the war, but we continue to militarize, and that, of course, increases our spending. If we look at the EU defense program, and we look at the Trump plan, all of that means that we will further affect the people. This is a billion euro industry where we continue to manufacture weapons. And this will just fill the pockets of the defense magnates, and it will force young people to their graves. Ursula von der Leyen is choosing one side, and we are choosing the other side.
Speaker is Ms. Glavak, seat 419, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, it is completely clear that we cannot allow this historic precedent to happen, to reward an aggressor with imperialistic tendencies, and we cannot allow the moving of borders by force. I'm speaking from a perspective of a country that has gone through aggression, but also a peaceful reintegration of occupied areas. We very well know that lasting peace cannot be built without territorial integrity. This means that the Ukraine must decide itself about its future. Borders cannot be changed by violence, and any solution must reinforce the ability of the Ukraine to defend itself. I support diplomatic efforts, and I also welcome any step that brings us closer to peace. But we can support only a solution which will respect Ukrainian sovereignty and reinforce the security of Europe. Europe must remain strong. Thank you.
And the next speaker is Mr. González Casares, seat 130, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. We want peace in Ukraine, but this isn't a peace plan. This is a plan for capitulation, and it's written by Russia and accepted by the United States, as we've heard today through our conversations with Mr. Winkler. Europe should stay united and defend a Ukraine that can have a long-lasting peace. If we accept the terms of this agreement, we will have Putin's imperialism ever closer to us, and we will feel it ever more threatened. And so for this reason, we need to uphold our unity. And a message to the EPP, don't join them. They're not there for Europe. We're seeing this. They are allies of Putin in many cases. We need to keep our unity here. It's fundamental to do so for the future of Europe. Another point in the area of energy. This agreement is leading us to be subjugated to Russia and to the United States for many years to come. We need to get rid of fossil fuels from our economy. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mr. Kanev, seat 495, please.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, it has been clearly revealed that the so-called Trump peace plan is nothing but a poor translation of Russian speaking points. And yet, today we listen to the far right and the far left in a coordinated message about the so-called Istanbul negotiations a few years ago, yet another translation of Russian speaking point. What we miss is a clear European plan, not only for peace in Ukraine, but on the architecture of European peace in the decades to come. We don't have the unity to achieve it because of the unanimity of decision required in foreign policy. But what we could make is to have a real European defense union based on such a vision for the security infrastructure for the decades to come, and any government willing to support Trump, Witkoff, Putin, and so on plans is free not to join. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Nykiel, seat 589, please.
Dear colleagues, any concession towards Putin just encourages Putin to be more aggressive, as evidenced by the history of Poland and the Baltic republics. Russia does not stop at one border. The whole world is talking about peace. But we need to remember that innocent people are still dying in Ukraine, children are suffering, families are losing everything. This is not an abstract discussion. This is about an everyday tragedy of many families. Poland has been directly affected by this war. We accepted millions of refugees. We are at the border. We are directly affected by what is happening, so we need to be able to have an impact on the final peace agreement. No lasting peace can be built on concessions towards terrorism. We need principles, we need unity. Thank you.
And the last speaker in the round of Catch the Eye is Ms. Grunkiewicz-Waltz, seat 836, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My patience was awarded at the end. So I will speak in Polish because it's very important for the opinion in Poland. Putin jest w drodze do klęski.
Putin is on his way to failure. Ukraine is going to win this war. If we don't realize this, we will never believe this. When Poland believed in 1939, if Poland had believed in 1999 that the Bolshevik Russia would occupy us, we wouldn't have won, and you would not be here in the West, but you would be at the Pyrenees line. Poland was only independent for 2 years, and if we had not stopped the Bolshevik wave, the wall between the East and West would be in the Pyrenees line. I don't like the fact that the sanctions are not being monitored in the adequate way. I follow very closely what kind of banks are operational in Russia. Why don't we eliminate all the banks from Russia? Well, because it's business.
Thank you very much, colleague. So, colleagues, we still have 2 speakers left, so it's nice to see you coming into the chamber, but please take your seats and wait to talk until we have been voting. Thank you. The next speaker is, or I will give the floor back to the Commission and Commissioner Dombrovskis for wrapping up this debate, please.
Madam Chair, Madam Minister, honourable members. Let me start by reading out the title of this debate. EU position on the proposed plan and the EU engagement towards a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. The word peace is there in the title, contrary to what some Patriot members were claiming. Because a just and lasting peace for Ukraine is what we want to achieve, not capitulation for Ukraine. A just and lasting peace for Ukraine that respects its sovereignty and territorial integrity, does not set restrictions on Ukraine's defense capabilities, which would leave Ukraine vulnerable to future attacks. A peace which ensures real security for Ukraine and Europe, not just serves as a prelude for further wars. Because Russia is openly talking about invading other countries, including EU and NATO countries. And if Russia will feel in any way vindicated regarding their aggression in Ukraine, it will only encourage more aggression. Strong and coordinated European engagement has yielded constructive progress in negotiations for a Ukraine peace plan. This included a solid European presence during discussions with Ukraine and the United States in Geneva, with participation notably by representatives of the European Commission. We welcome the progress made at meetings between US and Ukraine in Geneva. As their joint statement makes clear, this was a major step towards a just and lasting peace. So we commend significant efforts of Presidents Trump and Zelensky and their teams. There are issues still to be resolved, and we stand ready to continue to support this process. And we have made clear the centrality of the European Union in securing peace for Ukraine must be fully reflected in any credible plan. As we move forward, we must remain united.
Commissioner, one second. Dear colleagues, please be quiet. It's really difficult to hear what is being said. So please take your seats and please be quiet in respect for the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As we move forward, we must remain united and keep placing Ukraine's best interest at the center of our efforts. This is also about the security of our entire continent now and in the future. Intensive European engagement will continue on all fronts to secure a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Europe has been on the forefront of supporting Ukraine since Russia launched its full-scale aggression. In total, the European Union and its member states has provided 187 billion euros in support. And Ukraine is facing very sizable financing needs in the coming 2 years. The Commission has recently provided the options paper, how to ensure this support. However, our options are limited by the fact that Ukraine is facing debt sustainability issues. So we cannot just provide another loan. Our support must come with strong grant-like features. And the option of the reparation loan can provide this kind of support without putting substantial fiscal burden on EU and its member states. As President von der Leyen has just said, we cannot see a scenario in which the European taxpayers alone pay the bill. This is Russia's war, and Russia is under an obligation to compensate Ukraine for the damages it has caused. That is why, under the European Union's leadership, already in 2024, G7 members unlocked 45 billion euros in additional funding for Ukraine under the Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Initiative. These G7 loans will be repaid using the profits generated by the immobilized Russian central bank assets in the EU. The implementation of existing ERA loans is progressing well.
Commissioner, I do apologize for this. I have to ask them again, please. Dear colleagues, we're still working up here. Please be quiet. Take your seats and be quiet and respect the Commissioner who is speaking right now. So please stay quiet. Colleagues, please stay quiet. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Commissioner, and I do apologize.
Thank you. The implementation of the existing ERA loans is progressing well. A total of 30.9 billion euros is already disbursed by G7 partners. The EU, with its last disbursement earlier this month, has now delivered its entire 18.1 billion euros contribution under this initiative to Ukraine. It also marks an important step. Russia is already beginning to pay for the destruction it has caused in Ukraine. But we cannot stop here. Ukraine's financing needs are not only sizable, but also urgent. So we cannot continue endless discussions about options for future funding. We must take concrete decisions, and the Commission is ready to present the legal text. To conclude, I would thank the European Parliament for its strong and unwavering support for Ukraine, for the sake of Ukraine itself, and for the sake of security of our entire continent. Ukraine has chosen a European destiny. Ukraine's future lies in the European Union. This is not only a matter of destiny. This is a core and essential part of any security guarantee framework, and we will do everything to deliver it together. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Commissioner, and I do apologize for the noise. Colleagues, I have one last speaker. Would you please be so kind to take your seats and don't speak with your colleagues, even though I understand it's nice to do it. We will have to close the debate, and I will give the floor to the Minister representing the Council to close this debate on Ukraine. Please take your seat. Please stay quiet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll try to speak loud enough for you to hear me. President, honourable members, Commissioner, thank you for this debate. Many good points have been made, and they have been repeated by many. I want to thank you, the European Parliament, for its continued steadfast support and unconditional solidarity with the Ukrainian people in their fight for peace and self-determination. Your commitment is crucial. It is crucial for Ukraine, but your commitment is also crucial for the defending of the very principle that we as Europeans stand for. In your latest resolution on Ukraine, you stress that any peaceful solution must respect the will of the Ukrainian people and not be imposed by any other international actor, and must not reward aggression or undermine Ukraine's future security. It is now vital to stay the course. We must continue to ensure strong EU support to Ukraine, including in the ongoing diplomatic process. We will pursue all our efforts to help Ukraine reach a comprehensive, just and lasting peace, while making sure that nothing on Ukraine and Europe is decided without Ukraine and Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Pierre. The debate is closed and the vote will be held on Thursday. Thank you, and we will proceed with the vote.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Let's proceed with the votes. Before that, I will announce that the competent authorities of the Netherlands